I have noticed that there have been a lot of unhappy Americans. Now, I have no way to tell to the extent of how many, especially because looking on the internet, there's no way to tell if the problem's bigger than what it is because there are just a small minority of people talking about it that are making the problem seem louder. But looking at some of the stats in general, like just seeing like the amount of people that are said to be depressed and the suicide rates, among other things of what I've been hearing online, it feels like there is definitely a number of Americans who feel unhappy with their life. And I want to talk about why is this? Because one of the things that is also true is you have a lot of kids growing up today who don't really feel proud to be American. I think there's also that all comes down to the same reason of just being unhappy. Because you have a lot of people talk about all the opportunity in America. I think there are a lot of Americans who feel like there isn't any opportunity, which there is, but I think there are some Americans who feel trapped in a way. And I think most of this revolves around college, with both making a decision at a young age, but also the debt that's involved too. Now, although you are an adult when you make a decision to go to college, your brain still isn't fully developed and you are making a big decision. And what do I mean by that? Well, two things. One, at least for most people, they have to take out a loan, and that's the first thing I want to get into is that when you take a student loan, there's no way to get rid of it. If you're a company and take a loan, and you can't pay it, you can declare bankruptcy, and the government has options for you as a company to get rid of those problems. Now, are there consequences? Yes, but you have the ability to get rid of debt. But as an individual, if you can't pay your debt, well, guess what? The government will make you pay it anyway. So if you felt like the decision of taking a student loan was incorrect or wrong, well, guess what? It's too late. There's no undo button now. Now, the other thing too is with college is that it's 4 years of your life, and it's 4 years of your adult life that you're spending there. So it's a huge commitment to make. I think there are definitely a lot of people who are either not ready for college or college isn't for them that feel railroaded to go or pressured to go into college because they feel like they have to. And I feel like there's a very weird limbo in American culture because on the one hand, if you didn't go to college, you're looked down upon. But in the same vein, being smart is also looked down upon. If you take school too seriously and actually try and have good grades, in general, you're generally looked down upon. Now, this doesn't exist everywhere in America, but generally in America, that is how it is. So I think what ends up happening is you have a lot of people who get out of college, and the only thing they get out of it is the piece of paper. And although there is value in it, specifically because a lot of jobs have it as a job requirement, and also you get paid a bit more than someone who doesn't have the degree in a lot of circumstances. But the downside is that you go to a job, and because you basically didn't really learn anything in college, you're not all too much different from someone who just didn't go at all. So if you are up against someone who did pay attention in college and may have learned a bit more, then you might struggle to get a job even though you went through college. And now you spend 4 years of your life just to get a piece of paper and still know nothing about what you just learned about. And you also have no real experience. Now, again, this isn't true for everyone, as there are internships you can take as an individual in college. And it also depends on which field you go in, depends on how much the knowledge matters. Now, one of the things that gets brought up a lot, which you may have even heard yourself, is that there's a lot out there that you can learn on the internet. And that's true. But I think the problem is that even though that stuff's out there, it doesn't matter because most people aren't going to bother to learn it anyway because you already have a culture where it's cool to just not learn. So why would you go out of your way to learn something? Growing up, you're taught that all that matters is the number you get, not what you're actually learning. So when it comes to a situation where you try and learn to educate yourself in a way, you're kind of doing something new for the first time. The path of not taking the norm does exist, but the problem is that it's not really talked about all too much, and if you don't take it, you're often looked down upon. And I also don't like the idea of you work one job for the rest of your life. I don't really like that idea at all. Now, for some people, this is great, but I don't think this works for everyone. Especially because you have some people who may be unsure about what they're doing, and they might learn at a point where it might be, at least it might feel like it's too late. Because they already spent all this time in college, they get to the position they are, and now they feel like that the job they have isn't for them. Well, it might feel like it's too late. Now it's not, but it is very difficult to change the direction. And to add on to all this too, there isn't really much self-discipline. Now, self-discipline isn't really something that's taught, but isn't really something that's encouraged all too much. Now, there definitely is an argument to be made to say that, well, homework does teach self-discipline, but I don't really know how true that is. Because you look at the average American, and throughout their whole life, they're pretty much told, this is what you do, this is what you do, this is what you do. And now all of a sudden you take that away and you say, well, do what you want. And you have a lot of people who try and look for something to tell them what to do. I think what this often leads to is taking the easiest choice and finding a path where you're pretty much told what to do. But the cost is that you're living a life that isn't true to you and a life that isn't making you happy. Now, one of the things I hear talked about a lot is it better to take a job that you love but you get paid less, or take a job that you hate but you get paid more? And this is a really tough question to answer, and I think it really depends on the person, and it's something that you really need to ask yourself, what do you want? Because you're the only person that could truly know. On the one hand, if you get paid more, you have less money problems, which for a lot of Americans, especially in their younger years, their biggest problem is money. So to have a job where you get paid more is great. But a thing that can often be overlooked at, it's still your life that you're living doing this job. The time you're spending doesn't go away. And in a way, you're kind of wasting the time you have doing something that doesn't really mean much to you, that you're not getting much out of. And so then the question is, how much is the money worth it if you're spending a good portion of your life doing something that you don't enjoy in the first place? Now, on the other hand, you work a job where you get paid less and you enjoy the time you're at your job, but then the time you're out of your job, you're just stressed out because of money. Now, at the end of the day, it really comes down to the individual. But I wonder how many people actually think about the pros and cons of each world, and how many people just say, oh, well, I'm going to go after more money because it's more money. Or people say, oh, well, I'm going to take this job because it's less because it seems cooler. I think you also see a lot of people that feel unhappy because there's a life they do want to live out, but they feel afraid to because they feel like they can't. So they'll just take the safe option and live a life that's safe, but a life that's not really meaningful to them. And to those people, I say, go after. This is just my 2 cents. But to those people, I say, go live out the life you want to live anyway. And here's why. If you both, if you look at both outcomes, in one outcome, you live a life that's safe, but you're unhappy. But if you try to take the path to live a life that makes you happy, there is a chance that you fail. There's also a chance you succeed. At the end of the day, if you fail, you just end up in the same situation you would have been if you took the same path, which is that you're unhappy. And does it really matter the circumstance you're in if you're unhappy? Because the way I see it is this: you only have one life, one shot. That's it. You only get one shot, and then it's gone. So why waste it? Why take the safe option on your one chance of life? Why waste it that easily? But I think, too, the last thing I want to say is I think a lot of Americans feel stuck. They feel stuck in the situation they're in, so they have debt that they have to pay. And I think that's the real thing that makes them feel stuck. So they feel forced to work a job they don't want to work, but they feel like they have to work it because if they don't, well, then how are they going to pay off their debts? They have to keep the job. Now, with all this being said, it is disingenuous to say that this is the most unhappy Americans have ever been. Because look at the early 1900s. Not even during the Great Depression, but even before them. You have a lot of Americans who were working factory jobs, which I guarantee most of them were very unhappy working those jobs. I think there can be a comparison to be made from people working in those factories to the people working now. The only difference being is that there's a minimum wage, which a lot of people are still unhappy about. Now, one of the things that have been happening recently is that there's been a shrinkage of the middle class. And this is bad. And here's why. If you look at the Great Depression and what caused it, the main issue was that all the people who had money had nothing to spend it on, so no one was spending their money. And because they weren't spending their money, the people that were producing these things lost their job because the companies weren't making money. And with the middle class shrinking, it makes me wonder, will we have another depression? Now, we have had recessions in the past, but those are due to all sorts of different things. So there is a little part of me that wonders, will there be people that run out of things to pay for? Now, there is the entertainment industry, but the truth is most people who work don't work in the entertainment industry. They work in other industries. I've been thinking about this a lot, and I wanted to say something just to get the discussion going. If you have any stories you want to share or any other thoughts you have on the situation, definitely feel free to share them. I'd definitely be interested in reading them. I hope all of you have a great day. I'll see you all later. Goodbye.